from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Isabelle Westbury in London, where the snow is just about beginning to disappear. We were lucky though, because with enough of the white stuff still lying on the ground, we saw a scientific paper published which concluded that the risk of coronavirus transmission from a cricket ball is very low. You might remember that last year the return of recreational cricket after the first lockdown in the UK was delayed after the British Prime Minister warned that a cricket ball was a natural vector of disease. Well, the news was welcome, not just for the summer of cricket that awaits, but also for the snowball fights that were happening up and down the country this week.
No snowballs down under. It's fine and sunny and warm. The Sheffield Shield, the domestic one-day comp, about to start after the Magenta. The Sixers won the BBL final in front of a crowd. Yes, it was a crowd. Fantastic. Yes, it's Jim Maxwell, by the way, here in Sydney. And as I mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago, Pat Cummins, Australian captain. Well, it's starting to happen. He's been made captain of the New South Wales one-day side. And this could be a sign of what's going to happen for the Ashes.
Well, Jim, you might finally have your way. Hello, this is Charu Sharma for All India Radio in Bangalore. Just a quick word about, you mentioned snow, Izzy, and although it's still winter in India, one half of the country up north with the Himalayas has a massive winter, and the other in the south where I live, there's no snowball at all. But in the north, we did have a bit of a tragedy with the Himalayas, an avalanche perhaps, or a landslide, or whatever the reason was. There was a huge surge of water that came down and took many lives. So condolences to all those who were affected and those who lost their lives. But a little bit of egg on my face as well, because I don't know whether that 36 all-out in Australia pales into insignificance when it comes to more proximate defeats. And this one was carnage at Chennai. And, if all those accolades that were thrown the Indian team's way about fighting spirit and resilience and what have you are true, then it's about time we start doing it all over again now. 3 matches to go.
Absolutely, and I promise that I won't gloat throughout the entire programme. Joe Root's side beat India by 227 runs in the first test in Chennai to go 1-0 up in the 4-match series. India, by contrast, were bowled out for 192 in their second innings, chasing 420 to win. Now, a lot of people may be screaming recency bias at their radio, but where does this test win rank amongst England's best of all time? Here's Root.
I'm sure it'd be right up there. I think it was always important that we started well coming here. It was a huge series, India full of confidence off the back of what they've achieved in Australia, and a very fine team at home. So for us to perform like that is exceptional.
So he praised England after their series win in Sri Lanka, but said it would be a step up in quality against India. Well, it looks like the tourists have risen up to the challenge. Former England captain Michael Vaughan says it was a perfect 10 out of 10 performance. That's a bold claim, Charu. Provide us with an India perspective. Do you agree?
Well, I mean, we can't take the win away or any sheen away from that victory. But the toss did seem to play a very important part, because the pitch deteriorated pretty consistently through the 5 days. And the team batting fourth was always going to be at a huge disadvantage. But that said, yes, England played just a perfect test match. Huge first innings score. Scored somewhat quickly, but strangely in their second innings, when they kind of, scored in bursts, like they didn't quite know what was going on. But of course, eventually they did, because their bowlers, and that's where the big difference was. I think their fast bowler capability and even their spinners knew that they could get India out the last time around, the fourth inning. So perfect script for England, and the Indians must be wondering what went wrong, because they came here looking very strong. There are a few holes in the team still because of injury, but they're at home, so they had plenty of options available, and nothing seemed to work. So they will really be scratching their heads saying, what happened here? It was certainly not the kind of script that the Indians were looking out for.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if India do win that toss, whether England's spinners in particular can hold up. Now, Jim, I think I spied on Twitter that you may even have been cheering on an England win.
Well, it's always good to see England winning away from home, and they keep winning away from home, don't they? And yes, I'm sort of cheering them on because if they happen to win the series with the right margin, I think Australia, if you work out the permutations of all this, might get through to that final. No, look, take nothing away from England. Yes, they won the toss, and that was beneficial, but they outplayed India because of Joe Root's superlative batting. And it just shows you in test match cricket with a deteriorating pitch, if you've got a lot of runs on the board, you're normally going to control the proceedings.
Well, all three teams, England, Australia and India, all in with a chance of playing New Zealand, who've already cemented their place at the final of the World Test Championships to come. But you touched on it. We saw a match-winning double century from Joe Root in England's first innings, plus Joe Root equalled Michael Vaughan's record of 26 Test wins as England captain. Jim, as both captain and batter, what do you think has clicked for Joe Root?
Oh, a lot of things have clicked apart from his own brilliance. He seems to have found a way to get Jimmy Anderson to become the Methuselah of fast bowlers in Test cricket. I mean, I think watching Jimmy run into bowl, he could be doing that in another 5 years' time. He doesn't seem to take anything out of himself. He rarely gets injured, and he is a phenomenon, as we saw on several occasions in that game. But other spinners played their part, and Jofra Archer was bouncing around and intimidating the batsman, and Stokes is always handy to come in and knock someone over. So they've got that part of it right, and if they hold their catches, and Stokes is very good at catching most of the edges that go, and Butler's keeping was much improved, but he's not going to be around apparently. So as I said last time, I'd like to see them try to pick their best side 99% of the time, but there's other reasons for that, I gather. I think it's been an outrageously good performance by England, and there's no doubt that having the warm-up in Sri Lanka prepared them very well, perhaps better than India were prepared for this first Test match.
Yeah, that's a good point there, because India came back only a couple of weeks after having had that great high in Brisbane and winning that Australia series, and then straight into this, whereas England, you can say, have had a nice little build-up into this. But what about India? I mean, after that, they'll need to do a bit of soul-searching after what was quite a humbling defeat. Well, here's their skipper, Virat Kohli.
As top-order batsmen, we have to take more responsibility and pride in the fact that we have to do most of the work. But if your lower order stands up on such regular basis, it should give confidence to us as a team and the whole batting unit that once we have big partnerships up front, then these guys will do that extra job at the back as well, which makes our positions even stronger. We accept defeat, we accept the things that have gone wrong, and we continuously strive to improve them and come back stronger and put in those performances that we as a side should be putting in every time we step onto the field.
Charu, was it fair to expect a bit of a lull after the heroics of Brisbane, a crash back down to earth perhaps?
I can't see any reason why, because if a team's good, particularly in alien or different conditions, and have done so well, you carry that momentum on, and especially when you're in home conditions, because it's all, what's it called, muscle memory. When you come back to India, these are very familiar pitches for the Indian players, and you've got to feel completely at home. Add to that the psychological advantage of having beaten one of the toughest teams to beat in their own backyard. So I'm sorry, there's no reason for expecting a lull at all. You've got to carry on from there. You've got to come in here and say that we've got a fantastic record at home. We're playing under home conditions. We've got the right troops. Let's go for it and show England where they are. But didn't turn out that way, did it? So no excuses, really, apart from perhaps losing the toss. But even that, really, it's your own ground. It's your own pitch conditions. And all it will do is make the Indians a little more confused about what kind of pitch to prepare in Chennai, an adjacent pitch, for the next match. Because surely they can't leave more grass there, what with Anderson and Archer and whoever else.
One sort of good factor for India is that similar to that last test against Australia in Brisbane at the Gabba, we saw a swashbuckling 91 from the exciting Rishabh Pant in India's first innings, once again showing his talent with the bat. I mean, surely he's cemented his position in the team.
Well, his wicket-keeping was actually improved, a bit like Butler for England. He did a better job than in Australia, where at times he didn't quite look the part. But you'd play him as a batsman anyway, given the way he's able to change the course of the game. And if India become front runners in the next game, look out. If he's coming in where he bats in the order behind a good start, those England spinners will really be in trouble.
Another man that's been a joy to watch in all formats of the game is, of course, Virat Kohli. Now, he played himself into form with a half century in India's second innings, but I see he's dropped down the ICC rankings to, well, a lowly fifth, and India will need him to follow Joe Root and go big to get India back into this series, won't they, Charu? I mean, dare I say they're expecting a daddy 100 or two from him?
Well, let's move into the double hundreds, really, because I don't think anything less is going to cut it. But of course, he's a very big player, and he'll be cross with himself that he failed in the first innings, and it was too late in the second innings. But, you know, just going back to that little bite that we had from the captain earlier on, Virat Kohli, talking about the runs that come later in the innings, really, or later in the order. In Test match cricket particularly, there is still a need for specialists. And for any skipper to be hoping that 7, 8, 9, or even for leave alone 10 Jack is going to actually be adding runs is, you know, perhaps expecting a little too much. I mean, the runs must come from the top 6. Everything else should be considered a real bonus. I know Washington Sundar's knock was a big bonus, but he really is in there for his off spin and to take wickets. I mean, if you're not going to take wickets but score 80, not good enough for me. Your job has to be primary. Maybe there's scope for one all-rounder in the team, but the runs need to come from the top 6. And you cannot be looking to any player below that number to be seriously considering adding runs to your innings total. So there's something wrong here with expecting people down the order to score runs. The top 6 must take that responsibility, and the bowlers must get the wickets, rather than saying, well, look, see, I got a 50 anyway. Well, guess what? That didn't help because the opposition got 100 more than they should have. So the Indian batting, I mean, much vaunted in India, because these are their own home pitches, really needs to be doing a lot of soul searching. I think the bowlers are not quite so much to blame. Just the batting needs to make sure they get some daddy hundreds, as you said, and not just Kohli. All the rest are capable as well.
Well, it seems they have the personnel in place. It's just the execution that matters, and lots to discuss with the second test coming out fast just 3 days after the end of first one. But beyond the cricket being played now, BBC Sport have been having a little look down nostalgia lane recently, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the 11 names the public voted into BBC Sport's all-time India Test team. Now, these were Sunil Gavaskar and Virender Sehwag, Sachin Tendulkar at number 3, Rahul Dravid, Virat Kohli, MS Dhoni, Kapil Dev, Anil Kumble, Bishan Bedi, and then Jasprit Bumrah and Zahir Khan to finish things off. What do you make of that? Is anyone notable missing?
Well, I mean, 50 or so in terms of notables. Many. But, you know, these things tend to be a function of the modern generation sitting on a computer, and not enough thought goes into the past, or I think there's a very heavy influence of the last 10, 15 years or so. Nothing wrong with the names. Perhaps you could argue that somebody like VVS Lakshman is missing, and some of the big-time spinners in India missing. You know, you want to talk about Chandra or Prasanna in terms of the off-spinner. And Jasprit Bumrah really is a fine bowler. I was the first one to say that he's the number one go-to bowler for India in this series. But I don't think he's as proven a commodity as many others. So in the fast bowling department, I suppose you might go with Zahir, although there were plenty of others who did really well. Srinath did well. Kapil Dev, you can't argue too much about. Dhoni perhaps walks into the team. Some may argue about Virender Sehwag, but, you know, I mean, he's got all those triples under his belt and a true match winner. You can't argue with the list. Only one wishes it was like 22 long and not only 11.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
So next on Stumped, we're going to hear from the man who delivered one of the most amazing Test debuts of all time. The West Indies Kyle Mayers became the first player to make a double century on Test debut, as his side pulled off a remarkable run chase to beat Bangladesh by 3 wickets in the first Test in Chattogram. Mayers was unbeaten on 210 as a highly inexperienced West Indies side chased down 395, the 5th highest chased in Test history. And one of the first people to congratulate Mayers after his record-breaking innings was his father, Shirley Clarke, who has coached him for much of his life. And Mayers has been telling me how emotional it was sharing that moment with his dad.
It was a very touching moment, especially for him. You know, I'm tougher than him, so he was actually shedding some tears over the phone. I was just smiling, you know. But the whole situation, it was very emotional for me, you know. Even at lunch, I came off on 90 odd. I was like, I really doing this. In my first game, I really doing this. Like, it got emotional for me then. But then obviously going back over with the job at hand, you know, I switched back on and stuff. But then after the game, my dad, first person that I called, you know, when I got off the bus, he was like, yeah, man, you did well. Congrats.
You're a man that has a track record of remaining pretty unflustered at times of pressure. Can you tell us about something non-cricket related where you were caught up in a hurricane, Hurricane Maria in 2017? And I understand that you were pretty cool there as well.
Cool. I mean, it was scary. That's the truth. As I said, I played my trade for Windward Islands, and we were based in Dominica at the time. It was a very scary situation, you know. Everything just happened so fast. We were preparing for a normal storm, and then it was like, okay, it's going to be a category 1. So then me and my roommate, because I had a roommate, we went to do a couple shopping to buy a couple stuff just in case. And then quick like that, it was just category 5. And then everything happened so fast, you know. It was a bit scary, you know. We stayed calm. I always remember my granny telling me anything happen like that, you know, you pack your passport, your stuff that you really need, and you keep them close. And we did that. We just stuck at it to the end, and thankfully we got through. It was tough when we went outside to see what the storm had did. You know, it destroyed a lot of Dominica. A lot of people lost their life and stuff. When we walk out in the town, it was very devastating. I mean, it was hurtful to see. But as cool as we could be, we just tried our best to stay calm, the situation, and then everything just worked out. The Coast Guard from Barbados, they contacted me as soon as the communications came back up, and then they got the next boat out. So I had to be cool, but still, it was scary.
That's it for this week's Stumped on All India Radio. Stay in touch with us on Twitter via @BBCWS Sport and use the hashtag BBC Stumped. Thanks to my co-host, Charu Sharma and Jim Maxwell, and to you for listening. Join us again next time. Goodbye.
And you can hear all about India's fight back next time. Look forward to joining us.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.